High school football, well, it's an interesting time to say the least. Teams have not been able to gather as teams yet. Meanwhile, football is being played in Alabama and Texas, and it's starting in Mississippi as well. Joining us now to talk about high school football in Louisiana and about his own team, guy that's had to put up with Ed for, I think, going on 29 years now, sitting next to him. The good news for him is that he'll get to social distance this year, so you won't have to be in such close contact with him.
No, we might be in phase 3 or 4. You don't know that.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe you won't social distance.
And he doesn't want to social distance.
Okay. Well, I'll let him speak for himself on that. Of course, co-host of Friday Night Football, but also the second winningest coach in prep history in the United States, winningest coach in Louisiana history, and 26, 27, throw it out there with the number. You can debate it with the high school football state championships, the head coach of the John Curtis Patriots, JT Curtis. All right, JT, so there's your long introduction. Did I get anything wrong about the social distancing part?
No, it's one of the things you have to put up with. It was when we did some Sports Zone stuff, it was good to be away because I didn't have to hear the ranting and the raving, it's just one of the albatrosses around your neck sometimes you have to work through. That's just part of it.
Just deal with it,
That's right. That's
Are
right.
you being told what to do, Coach? Coach, are you being coached in the background? Because that's what I think's happening. Is that right?
I'm not being coached. My wife asked me a question, so you know how that is. Then I got to answer.
Yeah, you better have the right answer too.
Yeah,
that's
right
the most
answer
important
is right. Exactly.
You better have the right answer, my friend.
I tell you, this is probably the most unusual situation that we could possibly be in. Yesterday, I think we have 35 school days remaining before we get into a game. And the practice and how you try to keep your kids fresh and yet still keep some conditioning and try to obey the rules as they've asked us to do is really a challenge. But I'm going to say this to you. The kids have been awesome. They are so anxious to play and so excited about playing that I think they would endure anything just for the opportunity.
So many layers here, I think, and I've complimented the LHSAA every step of the way on this particular issue because they're doing everything they can to try to play while trying to follow the rules of the state and CDC and medical experts and everything else. And we can debate the whole second week of October thing to the end of the earth. The fact of the matter is at least they're trying to play. That's the good news. The bad news is that at least a couple of weeks of the season will be chopped off, if not more than that, depending on what transpires. Where are you on all this right now on a personal level as a coach, as a parent? You've got sons coaching on your staff. You got other relatives that have been part of the program as well, your brother and so forth and so on. Do you feel like the LHSA is doing right by the state right now in terms of its athletic programs?
Well, I think they're kind of in a no-win situation. The state is kind of dictating what they want done. I can tell you this. Several of the athletic associations around the country have just not done what the state has asked them to do, and they decided to go ahead and play because they felt like the safety issue with their kids was sufficient and that they didn't need to follow the edict of the state. We have not chosen to do that at this point, and, I know there's a lot of political pressure to make sure that we do things the way that they've been asked to do, and that's, as you said, another topic of conversation. But the bottom line is I think they're trying to do all they can to give us the opportunity to play, and that's a positive thing. The only criticism I really had was that I wished we would have gone a little bit slower before we made a determination about no scrimmages or no jamborees, that if we were in a significant downward trend the week before the game, it would sure be beneficial to everybody concerned, not just our team, but all teams, to have a chance to play either in a jamboree or a scrimmage maybe the week before October the 8th. And And I'm still hoping that maybe that might be a possibility again if we're in a downward trend and things are looking pretty good. Because all of us, without spring training, no spring game, either against an opponent or against yourself, are really kind of in limbo about your team for this year. Because no matter what squad you're on, you lose a good number of seniors, and you have guys that you think can step up and play, and that's what you're hoping they're going to do. But the bottom line is we're not going to see them in action, and that's a difficult thing. And I hope that maybe we could reconsider that maybe as we move into the middle of September or so.
Yeah, you've already got an agreement in place with Bryce Brown and Carter to play a jamboree of sorts if you're allowed to do so, correct?
That is correct. You know, Bryce and I were scheduled to play on the first play-in date, and it was a great game last year that went down to the wire. And as the fans were involved, and I think there was a lot of anticipation of that again. But that was wiped out, so we called, and they were more than willing to do the jamboree. Said let's play the jamboree, and it's a great test for your team against a team like Carr to get them ready for the season. And so if they allow us to do it, we could put it together in a matter of 5 or 6 days. If I'm just hoping they'll let us have an opportunity again if the trend is in that direction.
So, Coach, how are, I'm asking a question that I know you don't have the answer to, but it's just a question I want to throw out there. They're going to play football at Tiger Stadium on September 26th. Why are we waiting 2 more weeks after that to play around the state?
That's a question that needs to be asked to the governor. I think the governor is dictating a great deal of this. And he has more information than any of us. But it would seem that if LSU and Tulane would be able to play, certainly we could have some type of controlled scrimmage or shortened jamboree game that we could play. I don't know if you all have had the opportunity to look at the restrictions that have been placed on the games, but it is significantly different and will be significantly more difficult than it's ever been. And to go into your first game with all these restrictions and no opportunity to have a practice of it is going to be a tremendous challenge.
Visiting with J.T. Curtis of John Curtis Christian School, and I'm sure you've taken note that they're playing football in Texas, playing football in Alabama, and set to start playing football in Mississippi this week. So Those are bordering states, and you mentioned that some athletic associations have departed from state recommendations. I don't know how many of those would be fitting that category in those states, and yet they're bordering states. So is that a source of frustration, or is it a source of, hey, if this goes well for a few weeks, that might be encouraging enough to get Louisiana moving?
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that this will work well in Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and that it might give us some incentive to say, well, they're having it. They're not having any significant difficulty. It's time for us to move forward. I think that would be a wise and a prudent move that would have some medical history behind it and would give us an opportunity to play and get our kids every chance to play. I'm going to tell you, probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to do in all the years I've been in this is tell those kids last year after the initial first 2 weeks, because I had kind of hoped after 2 weeks we would be able to play baseball and softball and run track, and to tell those kids it's over. We're not going to be able to do it. Was an extremely difficult position to be put in last year.
Coach, 144 games in Alabama. It's pretty interesting. And, I know, in my opinion, look, I know the governor is going to get a lot of heat for this, and I get it, but I think he's getting a lot of pressure from the public school superintendents, too. I really do.
And I don't know enough about that, but I think there is pressure being applied someplace. I think there's pressure being applied someplace. I kind of feel this way also, that people in my age group, okay, are vulnerable. We are in a more of a high-risk age group than other age groups. So it's incumbent upon me to take care of myself, to wear my mask appropriately, to make sure that I'm taking care of my body physically, to make sure that I distance myself. I don't go to large parties. When I go to church, we separate significantly. When we walk out of the building, I put my mask on. I mean, that's my responsibility. And I think it's a shame that we are punishing young people whose rate of illness and rate of significant death is almost minute, and not allowing them to play because of people like me. And I just think that there's a better way to handle that and put the responsibility on the adults to handle themselves in a prudent manner and let the kids play.
Reporting is reporting, and that's the job that people have, including what Ed and I do, for a living. But I think part of the issue is simply this, and that is that every day you're being bombarded with the numbers, one way or the other. And if there is a case of a youngster in school, that might be an athlete, contracting the virus and having problems, which we saw one report of that yesterday, well, immediately the alarm goes off and people get all excited and paranoid about it, when the fact of the matter is that the reality is that that's one out of, 100,000 or whatever the case may be. But nothing else is being reported about any other afflictions that are taking place with student athletes. Everything is about the whole virus situation that exists right now.
I read a statistic the other day that in the parochial system, 33,000 students, that the parochial system is caring for, that it was less than 0.5% of children that had problems.
And just to clarify that, you're talking about the parochial system in Louisiana, correct?
Yeah, 33,000, yes. And that's what, so my point is that is right in line with what the trend is nationally. And again, they're the group that we are punishing to a degree, and they're the group that probably is the less vulnerable of any of us. And again, I go back to what I said. I think you have to be wise in how we handle ourselves. I mean, when I'm inside, I have a mask on. If I'm outside, I'm going to try to have a distance significantly away from players that give instructions, which is different than I've done in the past. But that's my responsibility. I need to take care of that. I just think that we probably have overreacted a little bit. And I know that when we talk about death, people say, well, no death is worth the risk of playing ball, and I understand that. But you could say the same thing about riding a bicycle. Or you could say the same thing certainly about driving an automobile. You could certainly say the same thing about the influenza. I just think we've got it very much sensationalized, as you were alluding to, that has really created a lot of difficulty for us to be able to participate and play.
Well, we've seen it on the other levels, Ed, and that is that if they want to opt out, they can opt out. And
correct,
that would seem to me to be an option on this level as well, because otherwise I think what we're getting, the message is, we don't trust you to take care of your children. We don't trust the schools to do so when, in fact, the schools might be the safest places of all because of the precautions that are being taken. Most of the contact is coming when they're away from it, and that's kind of what we've seen in Major League Baseball. The problem isn't when they're together. The problem is when they depart, and that's why the bubbles have worked. And I think schools have taken the correct procedures. I know private schools are doing that, and like John Curtis, and they're protecting these kids at all corners. So I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it wouldn't slip through the cracks, but it seems to me that it's safest there. And if any of the kids don't want to participate, then allow them the opt-out option. And I'll let Ed comment, but to that end, JT, is anyone on your team not want to play at this point?
We have had one boy, a younger player. His mother was concerned because there was an elderly person in the home. And I agreed with her. I said, look, the last thing I want to do is put you in a difficult situation. I understand that completely, and it was a young boy that was going to be a rising sophomore, and I respect that. And we're going to go ahead and move forward. But I think the point you made is important to understand. We met as a district, the athletic directors did, and discussed a lot of the things that we're talking about. And every school had precautions in place to be as safe as we could be, from the teacher to the cafeteria to the entrance into school to how we are handling classrooms with students with masks on, and teachers are being protected in a plexiglass type environment where they can see everything but still be heard, but be protected from the spread of the virus behind plexiglass. I think everyone has gone above and beyond to try to give us a chance for our kids, number one, and I think this is probably sometimes we get lost in this conversation, is that they're to be educated. You can't get that March, April, and May back of last year. Kids that have missed it. It's going to be extremely difficult for those young people to make that up. So I think you got to try to move forward with your best intentions. And let me say to you also, we need to put responsibility and have the kids understand the importance of being responsible. And I bet I yell, let's social distance 30 times a day. But that's what we have to do. That's part of the educational process, to help them understand the importance of following the rules so that we can proceed with whatever activity is we want to do.
So, Coach, I'm going to make a statement. Here's what I believe, okay? And you tell me if I'm off my rocker or you agree with me. I think virtual learning and virtual contact works to a point. But I think kids are better when they're at school, they're interacting, they get to converse with their teachers, they get a good meal at school, they get into a routine, and especially for athletes, they get to go to practice. I just think that they do better as a group instead of staying home. I think that certainly has its limits.
I will say this to you from an educational standpoint. Let's address that first. Virtual learning is better than nothing, but it is not anywhere compared to the interaction of a classroom. With the teacher being able to observe students, their facial expressions, how they look at the problem on the board, how they interact with the teacher, there is absolutely no substitute for that. The mental health issue of being able to socialize with people, to be able to have something positive to look forward to, all of those things are without question. And the last thing I will say is this. The most expensive babysitters in the city of New Orleans work from 3 to 6 every night for parents. They babysit a high-energy, hormone-raging young group of boys and certainly young women also every day. Keep them occupied in a positive, in an environment that is going to be disciplined, in an environment that's going to teach social interaction as well as teamwork. And now we turn them loose and say, I'll see you later. What in the world is going to come of that? Doesn't make any sense to me.
You know what? I couldn't agree more. I was on the phone with a gentleman yesterday telling me about all the benefits of Zoom. And look, I agree with him to a point, okay? But you know what? I'm zoomed out, all right? There'll be a lot of press conferences all year long with coaches that are on Zoom. I'm zoomed out.
And they'll love it.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll love it. A lot of the coaches will, because they won't have to interact with the media. But I think, to me, that's not the kind of society I want. And, my kids went to school. I have a grandson who's going to school now. And you know what? I just think it's great. I think it's great for the kids. Plus, a lot of these kids, they thrive on that routine in that direction. And they don't have that right now in many cases. And to me, they lose when all of this goes on. And you know what, Coach? When the vaccine happens, whenever that is, November, December, January, February, March, April, when the entire country can get it, how much of the population do you think is really going to get the vaccine?
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
how many get
a
I talk to so many people who say, I don't get a flu shot. Well, if you don't want to get a flu shot, fine. Don't complain when you get the flu.
Exactly. And again, that goes back to personal choice. It's what I was saying about an adult person ought to be responsible enough to know how to take care of themselves appropriately. If they don't, then there's nobody's fault but theirs. The Zoom deal, as I said, it's better than nothing. It's got some merit to it, but there is no substitute for interaction with the instructor. And the other thing that I would tell you is this. I don't care who you are. I don't care what level that you are in life in terms of workplace or school. Routine and consistency is what brings about success. Making sure that you can consistently depend upon the environment that you're going in to be able to achieve your goal. If you walk into an environment that is chaos, that has no direction, that has no stability, nothing successful gets completed. And that's what schools should provide for young people. A safe place to learn, a safe place to be. Not perfect, because none of us are perfect, and there's no perfect situation. But it's a safe place. And I can tell you this for 100% accuracy. It's better than the street. Anybody that thinks a 16-year-old boy is going to sit home for 7 hours a day and going to do his homework, and then at the end of that day at 3:30 in the day is going to go out and cut the grass and go inside, is in Disneyland. It's too much free time unstructured for young people, and that's not a positive thing.
Well, he is J.T. Curtis, the head coach of John Curtis Christian School, and I'd be remiss before we let you get away not to let you comment on your team this year. You lose maybe the fastest running back in the state, a 4-year quarterback who is just a great player and great young man, a young man at Tulane, and Angelo Anderson, and a few others. So what about your team this year with the losses you sustained? What are you looking at this year?
Well, we think we got a team that's got an opportunity to be successful. I think we're going to have good team speed across the board. We won't have anybody like Corey Wren, but neither does anybody else. So that'll be a loss. And, of course, as you said, losing a 4-year starter at quarterback is difficult. But Buddy Taylor got some time last year and was able to have some significant snaps and is an excellent athlete, point guard in basketball, and we think he'll step in and do a really good job. We feel good about our secondary, a strong group back there that will be able to play press down defense if we need to really shut people down. I think we can be solid back there. We're going to running back will be a group of committee. We'll play 4 or 5 of them that'll all have an opportunity to run the ball. But, the most difficult thing is that we haven't seen any of them in action. We haven't seen them in a game-type situation, and that always concerns you. The thing that people sometimes fail to realize is that when you put the pads on, everything changes. It's the only sport that you can't practice out of the season that is just like the sport in the season. When you put those pads on and you put 22 guys on the field at one time, it everything changes. And that's the big question mark, I think, for not just John Curtis, but for all the schools. How are these kids going to react, and how are they going to mesh together as a team? So, we have hope that these guys are going to mesh together, and they've indicated a tremendous willingness to work and to overcome and endure. And I think that speaks to them recognizing that they could lose out their season. And they have been a joy to work with, and talking to other coaches, their teams have been the same way.
J.T. Curtis, John Curtis Christian School. Appreciate the visit this morning. Nothing but the best to you and yours. Prayers for everyone, and hopefully we'll be talking about a football game sometime soon. Thank you, my friend.
Good. We enjoyed it. Have a good day.
Thank you, Coach. All right, J.T. Curtis.